Thank you so much.
Thank you, Vidya. Thank you, everyone, for attending. And welcome, Dr. Bharat Rathod. Welcome, everyone. Welcome to 2025 Book Discussion Series. And today we have with us the author of Dalit Academic Journeys, Stories of Caste, Exclusion, and Assertion in Indian Higher Education, Dr. Bharat Rathod. The book is published by Routledge in 2023. And it is an honor to have you with us, sir. And about speaking from margin. Speaking from Margin is a student collective, an academic platform for research scholars, social political activists, and students to engage in contemporary discourses on social sciences. It attempts to build academic solidarity for social justice in higher education. We use this space to build solidarity among researchers from various marginal locations to engage with the evolving knowledge paradigm of social sciences. In our collective, researchers from SC scheduled communities, scheduled tribes, minorities, and OBCs participate to gain a deeper understanding of research methods, conceptualizations, and theorizations in the diverse field of social sciences. In our previous sessions, we received overwhelming responses from our participants, and research scholars from different regions, states, and central universities in India have attended our sessions. We would also like to thank our previous speakers who supported this initiative. Professor Kanchailaya, Professor Nivedita Menon from JNU, Professor N. Sugmar from DU, V. Geeta and Shailaja Menon, Professor Satish Deshpande, Professor Brahma Prakash, Professor Khalid Ansari, APU. Dr. Bharat Rathod has completed a doctoral degree in international education at the College of Education, University of Massachusetts Amherst. His research interest comprises caste, Dalit students, higher education in India, diversity framework, and qualitative research methods. His research articles are published in the Journal of Exclusion Studies and Journal of Social Inclusion Studies. Over the past decade, Bharat has been associated with youth mentoring activities to promote higher education among the unrepresentative communities in India. He has been associated with community development initiatives in Gujarat and involved with civil society organizations in India and the United States. He has been coordinating the Anti-Caste Campaign at University of Massachusetts Amherst to add caste as a protected category in the anti-discriminatory framework of University of Massachusetts Amherst. This book actually culminated from Dr. Rathod's doctoral degree in 2013 at the University of Massachusetts Amherst, while he was working with his advisor, Professor Sankita Kamath, and it actually culminated from their grant from USIF, United States India Education Foundation grant, Inclusive Universities, Linking Diversity, Equity, and Excellence for the 21st Century. I believe the book Dalit Academic Journeys is a pivotal intervention to understand the arduous journey a Dalit scholar reckon the reality in Indian higher education spaces, and it offers us some policy imperatives from Dr. Rathod's experience in US to alleviate the discriminatory situation in India by taking cues from scholarship like critical race theory. To deal with a situation that we have in India, to quote one of the critical race theorists, Crenshaw, critical race theory reflects an oppositional theory and an antithetical knowledge towards epistemologies that have subsumed racial subordination. It situates itself depending on the critique of the liberal impulse toward color blindness and practice of either the resistance or race-conscious radical traditions marginalized by the post-civil rights institution. Today, we have a situation in US where DEI has been like branded as a completely an antithetical to the American dream, where people of color were disregarded because of their inclusion in higher education institutions just because of DEI, diversity, equity, that policy. And this book actually deals with diversity as a concept and the and the frameworks of climate in the higher education institutions. So I think it is a very momentous account for us to engage and to reflect to enrich this overall discourse. And thank you for this book, sir. This is really eye-opening for us. And I would like to invite you to the floor. And you have like 40 to 50 minutes. After that, we'll open the floor to the Q&A.
Okay, so before I start, let me share my presentation. So, okay. Oh, I need a sharing request. Yeah. Uh, just a minute. Presentation is okay. You can see that screen. Hello.
Yes, it's visible, sir.
Hold on. Yeah. Still not. You can see the screen or the presenter view.
We can see the slide one.
Yes, not the presenter view, right?
No, we can see, we can see the next animation on the side, but we can see the slide in a prominent way. I think we have to,
Full screen slide one with the Dalit
no,
Academic Journey book cover, right?
no, it's in the, it has to be maximized.
Okay.
Vidya, can you help?
This technical part. Hold on. Why this is happening? Sorry for this technical thing.
Yes, Bharat. Now it's perfect, please.
Hold just a minute. Is it okay now? Hello?
Yes, yes.
Yes,
It's a
Bharat,
full
now it's
screen or
perfect.
this small screen? Hello?
It's full
It's a full
screen.
screen. Yeah, it's a full screen.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you so much. Sorry for the technical thing. Okay. So first of all, thank you so much, Vidya and Kabilan and team of your Speaking from Margin, for giving me this opportunity to share my research and my book ideas. So this is a privilege and honor. And I will speak around 30 minutes or so. And my main goal is about, hold on, this is really problematic. Okay, anyway. So I would like to start with the background of my book and research. So my research is basically based on theoretical and my lived experience in India and United States. Particularly, I did my master and my PhD here in United States, and the kind of contrast I have experienced and seen in terms of higher education, and particularly about people of color here we call it. So like we have in India called Bahujan category or the marginalized caste groups. Here we have people of color like Black, Latino, and Native American. So that experience basically very enriching, and I learned a lot from that experience with them and different kind of institutional programs and institutional intervention for development and advancement of people of color. I strongly believe that the theory and practice should go hand in hand. Theory alone doesn't make any change in society, so practices are closely connected. That is why uh, I said like this book is based on my lived experience, also along with my theoretical endeavor and theoretical discussion. This book is, and my research is supported by Fulbright Foundation. So in 2014 to 2017, we got a big grant from the India-US Foundation, Education Foundation, that is called Obama Singh Project, a diversity, equity, and inclusion framework-related project between University of Massachusetts Amherst and the Pune University in India. So I worked in that project, and my whole research is generously supported by the Fulbright Commission. Another thing is that regarding my research, I conducted my research back in Gujarat as an undercover researcher. That was really very intimidating experience because I was conducting research on caste and I didn't get the institutional permission. I don't know the word, what is there in India, but I didn't get the research permission there in Gujarat because I was worried that if I try to get the permission, they will not provide me permission, number one. Second thing is that if I get permission, then I might not able to complete my research and probably there might be some issue in terms of the violence or harassment or other kind of issue. So this is a very, very important part undercover because here the whole research framework, we call it Institutional Review Board, IRB. That's very comprehensive and very rigorous. So like 7 round of kind of scrutiny or questions, I had to go through, like to each and every detail about human subject review. So that is probably, again, based on my experience in state universities, we don't have a very solid and robust institutional review board or the research framework to understand the impact of research on participants. Okay, so yeah, this is slightly okay. Okay, institutionalized caste in India, right? So we all know that I'm not going to talk about how caste exists in Indian higher education. What is the impact of caste and caste-based discrimination on marginalized students, particularly students coming from so-called stigmatized caste? So I'm not going to talk about that because there are a lot of research and great research conducted on that. But I just want to focus on certain aspect of how caste is institutionalized in elite institutions. So we have normally in India, we know that we have two kind of system. One is like a state education system, state higher education or university system, which is like very mediocre. And honestly, that higher education doesn't teach you or doesn't give you any solid skill set which you can use in your life, in particularly regarding your career or in terms of any job and other prospect. But the second system is about more elite institutions like Central University, IITs, IIMs, and other premier institutions. So if you see the difference, so caste is more prominent or more relevant. Let me put it this way: relevant in these elite institutions or premier institutions. The reason is that because now, over the last 20, 30 years, the marginalized groups, particularly stigmatized caste groups, they are started entering into these elite institutions, right? And that is why the so-called privileged caste or dominant caste, they feel that this is their domain and they feel intimidated. So what happened over the last 20 or 30 years or so, now new phenomenon has started actually. And that demographic shift also impacted into the power imbalance on campuses. So one side, if you see the power imbalance is like two spectrum. One spectrum is that faculty and administration is still very much dominated by the dominant caste people, right? Another side, the new influx of the students from marginalized groups, from the stigmatized groups, they are also entering. So in this two spectrum, there is a power imbalance. So one side, the students from marginalized group, they are asserting their identity, they are asserting their knowledge, and they are asking very tough question to the faculty and the administration. And certainly they are seeking social justice program and social justice initiatives and fairness and so on. But the faculty and administration, they don't want to lose their hegemony over the higher education. So there is a tension going on over the last 20 years or so on campuses. And that is why we see so many incidents and suicides and other kind of institutionalized kind of repercussion and institutionalized um, punishment to the student groups and the students from marginalized groups. So we all know that official data shows that dominant caste groups, they are overrepresented, overrepresented in elite institutions. So now this is in public domain and official data from RTI that faculty from dominant caste, they are highly overrepresented in IITs and IIMs and other institutions of national importance. Whereas particularly a representation of SC, ST, and OBC, their reservation or their quota is almost like 50%, but the representation is on an average less than 5 to 10% in between. So significantly low in terms of their representation. So this is a very big issue in terms of higher education and who creates the knowledge and who has the hegemony over the higher education. Now, over the last 1 decade or so, another very interesting and very important phenomenon started. That is about socio-political climate has been changed. And this is due to the current right-wing BJP government. So we know that they want to saffronize higher education. So that is why they are pushing Hindu ideology and particularly about the caste-based narrative, which promotes the casteism or caste-based practices, value system, and knowledge production. So that is kind of a big impact over higher education system, and particularly the narrative which has been started changing over the last two decades or so, and campus climate and campus politics which started changing over the last 2 decades now has a significant barrier because of the political intervention by the state government as well as from the federal government, central government, which is like BJP government. So this is really a big shift, and I'm going to talk more about this, about the social political climate, how that is connected with the campus climate. Now, very important part of my research, which I believe that is I would like to talk about, is how campus climate is impacted by the socio-political structures and the cultural aspect of the society. So, as I said earlier, I spent more than a 1.5 decade in United States, and I did my master and doctoral degree here in two different kind of institutions. So, one in liberal arts, small private college. Another is a big state university, R1 University, University of Massachusetts Amherst. So I have a experience of both kind of institutions and higher education system. So based on my experience, I can say that research on social justice issues or issues of people of color, and specifically about the race and racism, is very much integral part of higher education system, particularly about liberal arts colleges and the big R1 university or the research universities. So, as earlier Kavilan was mentioning about critical race theory and DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion framework. These two parts are very much integral part of the higher education system. So critical race theory is equivalent, we can say that equivalent to critical caste theory, which is now just kind of emerging and we are building upon. But critical race theory is very comprehensive and highly interdisciplinary framework, which see how the race is integral part of the everyday life of the experiences of people of color, and people use in a various form, in a various kind of a research method, and it's a very powerful theoretical framework to understand the significance of race and how race still plays a significant role in US society and particularly in education and higher education. Second aspect is about DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion framework. Basically, DEI is kind of, you can say, came out from the critical race theory churning. It's outcome of the critical race theory, because there is a race and there is a racism in the United States since 70s and 80s onwards, from 1964 when Civil Rights Act came into effect. But society was and still largely divided on racial lines, by and large. And critical race theorists, they understood that how we can address the issues of race through education. And so in India, we have the affirmative action, but in the United States, they use DEI as one of the tool and intervention to raise the level of representation of the people of color, and particularly Black, Latino, and Native American. So in short, if I conclude DEI intervention, it's not a one policy. DEI is policy, program, theory, research, trainings. So DEI is part of the institutional life in United States. And now, if I compare the situation in India, so in India we have a reservation or quota system, right? That is, people say it's a kind of DEI, but it is not DEI. Quota and DEI are two very different things. So in India, the quota system brings a diversity or marginalized group on in higher education, but it is just a conglomeration of the identities. It is not the kind of diversity which has clear intention and different kind of mechanism to use that diversity to enrich the learning environment. So here we will call it diversity is not a means. Sorry, diversity is not the end in itself. Diversity is a means. So it is not an end itself. It's a means to bring the people and to enrich the higher education experiences of the students. So yes, as Kablan mentioned, that the current administration, the Trump administration, they are targeting DEI particularly. The reason is that because they realize that DEI is very powerful framework and the intervention program. And the so-called privileged groups, like the white groups, they feel that because of the DEI kind of program and the narratives, they are losing their historical hegemony, right? So that is why you can see the pushback from the white groups, and particularly in southern states. Second aspect about campus climate assessment is very much part of the US higher education system, particularly about big universities and urban universities, where campus climate assessment is a regular exercise. So every 3 to 5 years, they conduct a campus climate assessment to understand what is the climate of the entire campus. In that assessment or survey, the whole campus community participates, from student, faculty, and staff. And they try to understand how people experience campus, the interpersonal relationship, education, pedagogy, different programs, and certainly the experiences of discrimination or negative experiences or microaggression and so on. So that gives an idea like how a particular group or a particular segment on campus, they experience various issues in terms of the campus climate environment. And that is very, very important. And that also bring a lot of changes in terms of the priority of the institution, like how marginalized group, particularly about marginalized group, how they experience campus climate and what kind of interventions are necessary to bring in to improve the climate and certainly the experiences and the academic outcomes of the marginalized group. So diversity, equity and inclusion, as I said, that is not just a policy. It's a very comprehensive and elaborated program and intervention that permeates across the institution from the top level until the last level, and you can say that the people who were working at the lowest level, in a janitor form or in a driver and other kind of the smallest level of institution. And here, as I said earlier, the DEI is a proxy of affirmative action intervention. Okay, so DEI don't claim that we reserve the quota or we hire people because of someone's race, but DEI propose that XYZ department has a low or no representation of the people of color or particular kind of identity, suppose women or suppose Black or Latino or Native American. So how we can improve the representation? That is not just in terms of their enrollment and the job, but also in terms of, as I said, how their experiences can be part of the institutions and how we can learn from that diverse experience to enrich the learning experience as well as to improve the system. So, as I said, DI is kind of a framework. We start from the strategic diversity plan at the highest level in the university and at the lowest level in terms of the training and program and so on. Now, as I was talking about the DEI, now caste is protected category at UMass Amherst. So we started a campaign in 2022, and now caste is included in the campus climate, in the protected category in the non-discrimination policy of UMass Amherst. And recently we got a grant called Campus Improvement Grant to sensitize the campus community about caste and caste-based discrimination, because caste is including in the UMass. There are others 6 to 7 campuses and universities where caste is a protected category now. But what is the manifestation of that meaning? What is the meaning of that protected category? How that will reflect in terms of the intervention or the policy or impact on the people of oppressed caste, right? So now we are working with the UMass administration to include the caste in terms of the training and incident report and so on. So we got this grant called Campus Improvement Grant to sensitize the campus community and particularly the officials to educate them what is caste and how to understand caste-based discrimination and how to report the caste-based discrimination. So currently we are working on that. Second thing, diversity is not just, as I said earlier, it's not just about conglomeration of identities, but it is primarily based on the social justice aspects and theme, which is equity and inclusion. Equity, that means how all marginalized groups, they experience fairness and justice on campus. And inclusion in terms of how they feel like they are part of the institution. Okay. They are welcome here, they respected here, and so on. So for the equity and inclusion are also very much interlinked with the diversity. Now, lack of institutional framework to understand diversity and to assess students' perception and experience in India. So as I earlier said that campus climate is a very integral part of higher education here. But in India, we don't have a campus climate kind of a framework, or you can say survey or assessment, which try to understand the experience of students and faculty, and particularly experiences and perception of a weaker section, including the caste oppressed people and other marginalized groups, suppose trans people, LGBTQI plus, or women, or students coming from the very remote and backward region. We don't have any kind of institutional framework to understand their experiences. And most integral part or important part of the campus climate assessment is to know and to collect the data, how people experience discrimination, exclusion, and other kind of negative experiences, particularly the marginalized group. Because if any institution are not able to understand how the marginalized group and marginalized students particularly, they experience any kind of discrimination and biased treatment on campus, then how they can intervene, right? So there is no intervention, right? Because of that kind of lack of that data. Another thing is that any kind of intervention is supposed to happen based on evidence. Evidence means data-based evidence, right? In India, as I said, there is no this kind of framework. That is why we don't have any kind of systemic intervention to address the issues of uh, uh, Bahujan students or the caste oppressed students. Now, this is very important part of my research and my book. And just here, I want to highlight one thing. The difference between my research and my book is that because my research is kind of big part is academic and technical part, but the book is more in terms of advanced version of my research, but more for the wider audience. So that's the only difference. That's why I'm focusing more on book, because I don't want to go more in an academic and theoretical discourse, but more the practical applicability of the research and how we can learn from that um, research, academic discourse, as well as the lived experiences on US campuses. So my recommendation is also based on my conversation with Professor Sukhdev Thorat when we interacted in 2017 at the Caste and Race Conference at Brandeis University. And Dr. Thorat asked me that, okay, everything is fine in terms of academic discourse and the research outcomes and so on, right? But what is the practicality? Okay, how we can bring change in Indian higher education system? Okay, so the tangible outcomes, or you can say like what kind of action program, what kind of interventions, okay, what kind of trainings, okay, what kind of policy we can bring in so we can bring change, and particularly we can provide help and support to the marginalized groups, all kind of marginalized groups, certainly about the Bahujan students, but other groups like women and trans people and people coming from the marginalized background and oppressed background and so on. So these are here I am just mentioning a couple of recommendations. And number one, social and cultural support to adjust on campus. So as I said, most of the marginalized students, they are coming from low cultural capital, low cultural capital in terms of academic, not broader cultural term, but low cultural capital slash academic background. Uh, so they feel a lot of difficulties in the beginning, the first year or second year, to adjust in a new environment, right? New cultural setup in a new kind of socio-political situations and climate. So, what kind of social and cultural support, we can provide so they adjust in a new environment, in a new system, in a new cultural milieu, comfortably, and they feel supported. So that is very important part, and that is why here in US we have various kind of cultural groups and um, the various kind of student group based on identity, and that is supported by the university, supported in terms of the financial support to the groups. Suppose Black groups, Latino groups, Asian American groups, Native American groups, and so on. Second is financial and psychological support. This is very important part for students from marginalized background, because they are coming from the weaker financial homes, and they face discrimination or their own discrimination in the past in schools and so on. So psychologically, they are intimidated because of the environment, and by and large, the very small cultural clues and the so-called dominant caste culture on campuses that also give a micro messages that, okay, this campus or these institutions belong to upper caste, or this is dominant caste domain, not my domain. So how the financial support and psychological or mental health support are necessary. Financial support in terms of, definitely there is a scholarship, but there is a lot of corruption and delay to receive the fund, the stipend, and so on. So how to streamline that and kind of system so they can get their financial support on time, and certainly different kind of financial support to support their educational journey and other kind of educational outcomes. Third is professional and academic support. I don't know there is any kind of professional support available in terms of institutional support. So if I share my experience here at UMass Amherst, we have a office called Office of Professional Development, and that is in my own office. So this is our office in graduate school, where the Office of Professional Development offers 400 plus different kind of programs, from interview to CV to resume to academic writing to theoretical aspects and professional development and network and research and so on. So 400 kind of different programs they provide. So students can learn and they can enrich their academic and professional development goals. Second one is grievance redressal office should be autonomous. So we have SCST cell, but we all know that, and there are research conducted by many people, I also included in my book, that these SCST cells are good for nothing. Okay, they are not contributing anything for the betterment of the SCST and OBC students. So this office or cell should be autonomous and provided more resources and autonomy to these cells and run by the marginalized groups only, not by other groups. Second is sensitization program and awareness raising events. As I said earlier, there are so many programs here at UMass. I'm sharing again my experience. So I'm just giving an example from UMass Amherst campus. But as per my knowledge and experience with other students and friends on different campuses, there are so many programs they conduct to sensitize the campus community and also bring awareness. And not only that, but also they make it mandatory in some sort of sensitization program. So before we started this program, I was talking with Vidya that there is a research mentoring training for the faculty. Okay, and that is mandatory for most of the faculty, those who want to receive any kind of grant or fellowship from the graduate school. That is becoming mandatory at our campus. So this is one of the example, like how sensitization program is very important, and that helps to improve the academic outcomes of marginalized groups. Academic and pedagogical inclusiveness that focuses on teaching and discussion on caste and exclusion topics. So in India, we have hardly see outside the certain kind of courses, there is academic and pedagogical inclusiveness, because we see very rarely the representation of the Dalit and marginalized and tribal and other people, historical people and so on. And we don't see open discussion based on caste and discrimination and so on, right? That is consistently now reducing in the current regime. And they are also now not promoting certain kind of research. As for example, Dr. Thorat started Exclusion Center in 2000, I think 10 or something, right? But when this new government started, they started targeting the exclusion center. They decreased the funding. Some of the exclusion centers are almost closed or closed, so on. So this is very important to promote this kind of research, discourse, and the courses which educate the people, engage people, and give platform to conduct the research and intellectual engagement with this kind of issues. Last, training pertaining to caste and anti-caste issue. As I said, that we received that grant from the UMass Amherst, to create awareness about caste. So here I want to highlight one thing, that caste is a relatively very, very, very new topic for American audience and for American higher education. even though they understand the significance of caste and how the caste oppress people, they are marginalized or they experience exclusion or discrimination, you know, on campus or in society. So they realize that, and that is why they offered this grant to us. And now we are doing sensitization program about caste and caste-based discrimination. But in India, we don't see, or I don't know any program which particularly provide this kind of funding or this kind of training about caste sensitization or what is caste-based discrimination. Or the most important part, I would say, to educate the so-called dominant caste or privileged caste people, to understand their caste privilege, to understand how they practice caste through their behavior, their belief, their attitude, and other kind of socio-cultural and professional practices. So we need to have this kind of training and this kind of program in Indian higher education system, so we can educate the people and we make the campus climate more inclusive to the marginalized group, and particularly from students from the stigmatized caste or caste oppressed people. So I would conclude here my presentation, and I would really like to have a discussion and more comments because there are so many other aspects which I didn't touch upon, but I would like to discuss and answer through question and answer session. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Rathod. That's a very comprehensive presentation. I mean, uh, it's very vital that we actually sort of talk about this climate framework because it is very I mean, in Indian context, we have not uh, witnessed such, discussions to engage with the people at the receiving end and uh, how they actually sort of dealing with hierarchical, relations that they day to day negotiate with, and starting with the institutionalization of caste in India higher education and the new phenomenon which actually sort of kick-started with the emancipation of Dalit Bahujan students and the comparative dimension that you brought in, and also it's very important that we uh, discuss more on the policy imperatives. Although I'm very much interested about your undercover research experience in Gujarat, because I mean that might take long to discuss, but I'll open up the floor to participants. Kindly post your questions in the chat box, and if anyone wants to engage with Dr. Rathod, please raise your hand, or you can post the questions in the question box. So maybe I'll start the questions then. I'll post. I have few questions, but I'll start with one, which is very daunting for me since this like evil labeling of DEI in the US. And you have mentioned in your book about the data that the percentage of the demographics, Indian demographics, is mostly comprised of upper caste communities, and we have very negligible amount of Dalit Bahujan people there. So I wanted to understand this caste as a protected category in the Massachusetts Amherst, and the repercussions that DEI has been facing right now. And we know that most of the Indian demographics in the, I mean, people in US may not be sympathetic to the this protected category of caste. So, is there any way we can envision similar kind of repercussion against such protected category of caste, which from obtained from Cisco case in California, and now it's in Massachusetts. So I wanted to understand, and when we are talking about the sensitization process, you also mentioned whether we have something similar to India. We have this equal opportunity centers, and recently like equity committees and all that, but there are some kind of administrative lapses. So I want your views on that, and after that maybe if questions come, I'll Direct user. Yeah.
Yeah. So regarding your first aspect, it's very broad, very big. Let me try to summarize as much as shortly possible. Okay. So two things. Number one, as I said, the diversity, equity, inclusion framework, or the critical race theory kind of stuff, is very much pervasive in higher education in the United States. Okay. There is no debate. There is no kind of opposition to that, like in India, right? There's no completely supported by the higher education institutions. And it is an integral part of the higher education policy, practice, theory, and research. Okay. Now, the outside the US, particularly Trump administration, as I said earlier, they they kind of banning the DEI training because, as I said, just to please their voter base, which is like predominantly white, right? So that is happening completely outside the higher education institutions. Okay. So Trump administration will certainly do every damn thing to stop DEI and to give a message to higher education institutions to stop any kind of DEI program, not only program, but also about discourse, courses, research, and other kind of academic activities. But here is the contrast. The contrast is that higher education institutions are committed to the by and large. I'm saying not all, by and large. Okay. So again, I'm giving example of my own campus because I'm here and I'm part of the okay, probably let me tell you one thing I didn't tell or you didn't mention that. I work as an assistant director of Office of Inclusion and Engagement. Okay. So Office of Inclusion and Engagement is part of the DEI, Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Framework. So my office, in short, is support the graduate students, those who belong to the people of color or from the marginalized background, Black, Latino, Native American, LGBTQI, and other groups, including international students. So far, despite of the backlash from the Trump administration, our university and our office is standby, on our ground that okay, we will support DEI in whatever capacity we could and whatever tactic we need to use. For example, might be not yet we have discussed, but tomorrow you might change the name of the Office of Inclusion and Engagement to something else, right? To avoid that kind of repercussion, because it is not about submission to the federal government, but this the political tactic. We need to understand that when we are fighting against the power, against the wind, then we have to use our tactical move, right, to continue our work and avoid this kind of unwanted, unnecessary, and completely nonsensical kind of move, right? So that is why it's two different things. And DEI is basically very much integral part, as I said earlier, again and again, in a higher education. And that is compared to India, as per my own experience and research background, in India, we don't have anything close to the DEI, Yeah.
We have one hand raised. I think Aman, if you want to come in, or you can post the questions as well.
Hello.
Yes, yeah, you're audible.
Yeah. फर्स्ट ऑफ ऑल थैंक यू सो मच सर। मेरा सवाल सर ये है कि इंडिया में तो हम लोग समझते हैं कि मतलब कास्ट जो है अपर कास्ट लोगों द्वारा प्रैक्टिस किया जाता है, मतलब जो मार्जिनलाइज्ड स्टूडेंट जो पढ़ते हैं कैंपस में, लेकिन जो अब्रोड में जो यूनिवर्सिटीज हैं वहाँ पर जो मार्जिनलाइज्ड स्टूडेंट पहुंच रहे हैं उनके साथ कौन प्रैक्टिस कर रहा है?
Sorry, repeat your question. Last point में नहीं समझा.
My question is that, sir, in India, the untouchability and caste discrimination practiced by upper caste with marginalized students. In abroad universities, मतलब जो abroad के यूनिवर्सिटीज हैं वहां पर इंडियन जो मार्जिनलाइज्ड स्टूडेंट्स होते हैं उनके साथ कौन प्रैक्टिस करता है? मतलब ये आइडिया कहाँ से मतलब वहां पे पहुंच रहा है?
Okay, good question. तो मैं ये कहूंगा कि 1916 में डॉक्टर अम्बेडकर ने एक कोट दिया था, वो इंटरनेट पे बहुत वाइडली अवेलेबल है। वो कोट कुछ इस तरह से था कि wherever the upper caste or caste people at the time, caste people will go, the caste will go with them. Okay, and this become the global problem. एंड जो डॉक्टर आम्बेडकर ने 80 साल या 90 साल पहले बोला था, वो आज हम देख रहे हैं यहाँ। इसका मतलब आप जो पूछ रहे हो, उसका आंसर ये है कि जो भी यहाँ से लोग गए हैं, ठीक है, वो अपने साथ में अपना कल्चरल जो बैगेज वो लेके गए हैं। सो वी कैरी अवर कल्चरल बैगेज, वी कैरी अवर कल्चर, अवर अपब्रिंगिंग, अवर रिलीजन, our value system, and so on. And in India, when we talk about the caste or value system or social system, then caste is a central part of the value system and culture, right? So when you go from India to US or Canada or Germany, wherever, you certainly carry your caste and your culture, right? And other thing is that there is no relation between education and the critical consciousness. Okay, you might be a scientist, top level scientist. Suppose ISRO is the best example. You send a rocket in the space, but you start by breaking the coconut in front of the satellite, right? So there is no relation between the education and critical consciousness. Similarly, there is no relation between education and the aspect of human dignity, human respect, and social justice, right? You still believe that cultural nonsense and discriminatory practice, feudal mindset, and so on. So caste is still being practiced in the United States and other part of the world by the upper caste. Yes, only thing is that when person gets educated, the system of discrimination it also gets sophisticated, right? So educated people are more sophisticated in terms of their discrimination in discriminatory practices. And Indian higher education is the best example how the upper caste faculty and administration that discriminate the students. Even UPSC recently we have seen that how the marginalized applicants, aspirants, they are being discriminated, particularly in the interview sections. So short answer is that people from upper caste or privileged caste, they practice caste subtly in a complex way here also.
ओके सर, थैंक यू सर। मेरा एक क्वेश्चन और है कि
हाँ बोलो।
मतलब जो अपर कास्ट के लोग जो बाहर जा रहे हैं, अब्रोड जा रहे हैं, वो प्रैक्टिस कर रहे हैं, वो अपना मतलब आइडिया यहाँ से लेके कास्ट का जा रहे हैं वहाँ पे भी। क्या इन लोगों के आइडिया से कि जो अब्रोड में जो फॉरेन लोग मतलब पढ़ते हैं, क्या वो भी इन्फ्लुएंस्ड हो रहे हैं? क्या वो भी मार्जिनलाइज्ड स्टूडेंट साथ प्रैक्टिस करने लगते हैं कास्ट को?
नहीं 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 नहीं, वो नहीं। सी देखो, कास्ट अपने आप में, कास्ट इज नॉट जस्ट एन आइडेंटिटी, कास्ट इन इट्स अ कल्चर इन इटसेल्फ, राइट? इट्स अ कल्चर इन इटसेल्फ, राइट? तो कास्ट को चीज को समझने के लिए अमेरिकन सोसाइटी को पता नहीं और कितने दशक लगेंगे, राइट, समझने के लिए। तो उनको कोई लेना देना नहीं है कास्ट को लेके। यस, उनका लेना देना है रेस को लेके। ओके, रेस इन दिस स्किन कलर। सो यहाँ के लोग को उसको कुछ पता ही नहीं है, तो डिस्क्रिमिनेशन की कोई बात नहीं है। यस, यहाँ के लोग डिस्क्रिमिनेट करते हैं लोगों को बेस्ड ऑन स्किन कलर। सो सपोज मैं इंडियन हूँ, राइट, तो मेरी स्किन डार्क है वाइट पीपल से, तो उसके बेस पे डिस्क्रिमिनेशन हो सकता है या होता है कभी कभी। क्योंकि जो डिस्क्रिमिनेशन जो है वो बाय एंड लार्ज अनकॉन्शियस होता है, सटल वे में होता है, बिकॉज वो हमारे सिस्टम का, कल्चर का, डे टू डे लाइफ का और ह्यूमन साइकी का इतना इंटीग्रल पार्ट होता है कि बहुत सारे डिस्क्रिमिनेशन और डिस्क्रिमिनेटरी प्रैक्टिसेस और वैल्यूज वो अनकॉन्शियसली होता है, राइट? तो अगेन, जैसे मैंने कहा कि यहाँ के लोगों का कोई लेना देना नहीं है उससे।
ओके सर, थैंक यू सो मच।
विद्या।
Thank you so much, Bharat, for this very conceptually rich discussion. So when I was reading your book, so there's one chapter on your experience, like a very autoethnographic. So generally in social anthropology, and that's my own struggle of writing my own dissertation. How do you distance yourself from your own bias especially when anthropology we write whole chapter on positionality. So while writing your dissertation and while also conducting your field work, so how do you overcome this idea of keeping yourself, your own experience, your own lived experience, uh, from the point of view of distancing or not influencing the idea of your research in that way. So that will also help me to develop some more reflexive, self-reflexive way to develop your dissertation or kind of monograph. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. This is a great question. And let me start with saying that so in physics, there is a experiment called double slit experiment. Okay. And as per that experiment, when we see atom, when you release the atom, from the one split, then it goes and particularly behave in a some same manner. But when something is being observed, I don't know how physics still don't know the answer. Like when something is being observed, the effect of the observer itself changes the movement of the atoms, right? So the thing is that it's very, very difficult to keep the subjective opinion completely away from your research or from your subject. But having that idea that, okay, you are a researcher and your own biases, positive, negative, both, very clear. Okay. So when you have a clear biases, when you write down your biases, bias in terms of suppose I'm from the XYZ community or Dalit community. Okay, my lived experience is this thing. Okay, my biases are this thing. Then probably it will help you, to maintain some distance, from your subject and your own biases. And second thing is that you can continuously, I would say, the one single bullet or magic bullet is that you always question your own analysis and your judgment. Okay, try to avoid the judgment, and most you can say that, okay, this is the interpretation. Don't jump to the conclusion. So that's the one thing I would say. And the autoethnography is more in terms of my positionality, and that also explain that I have some biases, because my autoethnography clearly said I have biases because my own experience and my own identity is highly influenced by this topic, right? So when you make it very clear in terms of that dichotomy between researcher and as an individual who is conducting this research, then probably you will able to continuously ask the question. Again, the bottom line is that if I summarize in one sentence, it would be always question your own judgment and interpretation while analyzing the data. That's all. That's all. Judgment doesn't mean you doubt on yourself. There's a difference between judgment and like interpreting rationally, right? And certainly interpretation is must be. And if you see my research, I would say I try my best, to provide citations and the relevant information and the arguments, to reach to any conclusion or any interpretation, So that supportive evidence and supportive reference or the analysis and the rational and the argument, will somewhere I can say balance your interpretation, your subjective opinion.
Thank you.
Oh, there is something in the chat.
सर मेरा एक
Oh,
क्वेश्चन था। सॉरी, ये हैंड रेज का ऑप्शन मुझे नहीं दिख रहा है, तो क्या मैं पूछ सकता
yeah, go ahead. Rahul, go ahead.
हूँ? थैंक यू भारत सर। सर, अमन के क्वेश्चन से जुड़ा ही मेरा क्वेश्चन था, और ये क्वेश्चन है खाना की है। तो जैसा आपने बताया कि मतलब अगर हम देखें फॉरेन में, तो वहाँ कास्ट जब से अब जैसे आपने अम्बेडकर का कोटेशन से बताया कि जब लोग यहाँ से वहाँ जाते हैं तो अपने साथ वो कल्चर्स लेकर भी जाते हैं, वो और उसके साथ साथ वो प्रैक्टिस भी करते हैं। तो जैसे हमारे यहाँ इंडिया में एक कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन है हमारे पास, तो जो मार्जिनलाइज स्टूडेंट्स हैं, जो मार्जिनलाइज ग्रुप है, उनके पास एक राइट भी है कि उनके साथ वो कास्ट प्रैक्टिस नहीं किया जाएगा, ऐसा हमारे पास एक राइट है कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन में। क्योंकि अमेरिका में वहाँ कास्ट मतलब कास्ट, अब जैसे यहाँ से लोग जा रहे हैं तो कास्ट प्रैक्टिस हो रहे हैं, पर वहाँ पे रेशियल डिस्क्रिमिनेशन होता था। और वहाँ अब लोग जाके सोफिस्टिकेटेड तरीके से कास्ट डिस्क्रिमिनेशन करते हैं। तो हम जैसे स्टूडेंट्स जो दलित आदिवासी जो मार्जिनलाइज ग्रुप से है, उनके पास कैसा वहाँ पे कुछ राइट्स है, कॉन्स्टिट्यूशनली राइट, जो उनको सेव करता है, सेफ गार्ड करता है?
ओके, सो अगेन जैसे मैंने आगे कहा, मैं फिर से रिपीट करता हूँ अलग तरीके से, कि कास्ट ये बहुत ही न्यू कॉन्सेप्ट है। इट्स अ फॉरेन कॉन्सेप्ट फॉर अमेरिकन पीपल और एंटायर नॉर्थ अमेरिका इंक्लूडिंग यूरोप आल्सो। It's a very foreign concept. They don't know what is caste. Okay. And I would say most of the time when you talk about caste, I would suggest to make it very clear distinction between caste and class. Class, CLASS. Okay. Because people always confuse between class and caste. Okay. So caste is not protected category or not part of the constitution or not part of the legal framework. तो जिस तरह से आपने पूछा इस तरह से नहीं है, पर फिर भी मैं ये कहूंगा कि यहाँ पे ओवरऑल जो लीगल सिस्टम है वहाँ पे डिस्क्रिमिनेट करना इतना आसान नहीं है किसी को, नंबर वन। नंबर टू, इंडिया के कंपेयर में यहाँ पे जो डिस्क्रिमिनेशन करने का तरीका है वो सोफिस्टिकेटेड है, बहुत ज्यादा सोफिस्टिकेटेड है, उसको प्रूव करना भी बहुत मुश्किल है। बट वो सब कहते हुए भी मैं ये कहूंगा कि अगर आप कहीं पे भी ये बता सको या दिखा सको कि आपको डिस्क्रिमिनेट किया जा रहा है आपके कास्ट के बेस पे और बेस्ड ऑन योर कास्ट आइडेंटिटी, इंडिया के मुकाबले, ये मेरा एक्सपीरियंस बता रहा हूँ, हाँ आप लोगों का अलग हो सकता है किसी का, इंडिया के मुकाबले यहाँ पे 10 लोग आपके साथ में खड़े हो जाएंगे आपको सपोर्ट करने के लिए। बिकॉज जैसे मैंने कहा, खास करके मैं हायर एजुकेशन की बात कर रहा हूँ, जैसे आगे कहा, यहाँ पे हायर एजुकेशन सोसाइटी का वो सही में ऐसा तबका है जहाँ पे क्रिटिकल बातें होती हैं, क्रिटिकल कॉन्शियस की बातें होती है, सोशल जस्टिस की बातें होती है, अच्छे लेवल पे लोग खड़े होते हैं। और राइट, और वो लार्जर एनवायरनमेंट है, अगेन जो मैं बोल रहा था, जो इंटेलेक्चुअल एनवायरनमेंट वो है यहाँ पे कैंपस पे जहाँ पे इस तरह की बात होती है। वरना ये कैसे पॉसिबल है कि हमारे यूमास कैंपस में, जैसे मैंने आगे कहा, 2022 में हमने एंटी कास्ट कैंपेन लॉन्च किया, वो 2023 के एंड होते होते कास्ट इंक्लूडेड इन द प्रोटेक्टेड कैटेगरी, राइट। इंडिया में मैं नहीं मानता ऐसी कोई चीज पॉसिबल है, क्योंकि फॉरेन कॉन्सेप्ट आप लेके आइए, टेक एग्जाम्पल, फॉरेन को भी हटाइए, एलजीबीटीक्यू या ट्रांस पीपल का बताइए कहाँ पे प्रोटेक्टेड कैटेगरी है। इट्स ए यूनिवर्सल, इट इज नॉट लाइक फॉरेन कॉन्सेप्ट, राइट। तो मैं ये कहना चाहता हूँ कि यहाँ पे वो जो सोशल जस्टिस का एस्पेक्ट है वो बहुत स्ट्रांग है कैंपसेस पे। और अगेन मैं इंडिया में जन्मा हूँ, वहाँ पे मेरा एजुकेशन हुआ और मैं यहाँ पे इतने सालों से हूँ, ठीक है। मेरा कोई स्पेशल बायस नहीं है इन टर्म्स ऑफ, आई एम नॉट दैट पेट्रियोटिक और नेशनलिस्ट ओ इंडिया इंडिया, ऐसा कुछ नहीं है। ना ही यहाँ पे मैं अमेरिका में इसलिए ओ अमेरिका ग्रेट, नो, ऐसा कुछ नहीं है। आई एम बियॉन्ड दिस ऑल द बाउंड्रीज, but based on my lived experience and academic experience in both the places, I can say that कि यहाँ पे जो इंटेलेक्चुअल और सोशल जस्टिस एस्पेक्ट को लेके जो अवेयरनेस है, जो प्रिपेयर्डनेस है, जो ओपननेस है, ओपननेस इज द राइट वर्ड, वो इंडिया के मुकाबले बहुत अलग है और बहुत ही एडवांस है। लेट मी पुट इन दिस वे, वेरी एडवांस। या
थैंक यू सर।
आनंद।
Yes. Yeah.
Uh, yeah, thank you so much for this talk. It was really outstanding for me to just relate uh, with like academic scenario of my life when I started my graduation till my PhD. So I have like two questions. One question for one question on the Vidyasagar's question. I will just continue and I'll just add on that. And second for the clarification. One question is that to understand as like Vidyasagar asked and you just mentioned about the biasness and all. So don't you think that it's not about the biasness, it's about your perceived reality. That's also contribute in a particular way of reality because I lived that way. I just felt the discrimination and I'm writing about that thing. So the giving the word biasness, I feel I'm not agree with that. And again, I just agreed on your one point to just when you were just concluding something, ask 2-3 times about like through the rationality and don't to go to the for the value judgment. So on this part, I want your comments. And second thing that I'm doing my PhD from IIT Hyderabad, and as you just mentioned that in the US universities, of course, they talk about the diversity and all. Even at point of time, I tried to, I just looked upon like university application. They also asked for write a diversity statement or something. So I appreciate US university in that way. But I want also clarification in that scenario. Even in the IIT, I see that there are STSC cells, and I'm just talking about my experience. I get the mail from the STSC cell that they just organize some kind of talks and things to even in the professional sense, like suppose there is in the December company is going to come in the IIT, so they just invite STSC people to give the professional help for the even CV making, how to go for the interviews and all. Even there is a cell for the gender equality, something like that. So I want to understand like how do you like see this kind of a thing. Even I understand that even IIT is like IIT is a one of the institution also in Indian academia who has a issue of the caste discrimination. But having this kind of institution, I'm not talking about the outcomes and all. So how do you just can relate that? Because I'm just why I'm talking this thing, because in the last of what you just mentioned that in the India there is no certain kind of a diversity thing. But I feel like is it a spark or something towards the diversity?
Okay,
Thanks.
there are so many questions in your two question loaded. Okay, let me try to answer one by one. Okay, so first you talk about the biases. So bias, I'm not saying from the negative point of view. Bias in terms of your own value system, judgment, and experience. You should minimize in research and interpretation. You cannot completely exclude that. Your own individuality. But my point was more in terms of like continuously challenge your own judgment and interpretation and so on based on the references, statement, argument, and so on. Because you, as a researcher, writing and analyzing data and so on, but don't forget that ultimately it will go to the people to review it. Okay, and they will read completely from different lenses, right? So when you put those kind of citations, references, arguments, rational, that help them to understand that, okay, you are reaching to this judgment and interpretation based on this kind of references, this research, this argument, this fact, this reality, and this kind of intellectual engagement. That is my main point. Okay. Regarding the diversity statement and so on. So let me tell you one thing, that in India, we don't have a diversity concept as such in terms of the meaning of diversity beyond the conglomeration of identity or the just only identity-based diversity. That is not the interpretation and implementation of the diversity here. Here, diversity is broadly encompasses certainly identity, life experiences, representation, and the fourth is about what kind of intellectual and lived experiences you are bringing with you. Okay, so diversity is very, very broadly interpreted as in terms of enriching the institutional academic environment. In that sense, in India, diversity is very narrowly defined and practiced, only bringing people from XYZ category. It is not included. It is not included in terms of the lived experiences, professional experiences, enriching the academic environment, because we don't have the data at the first place. What is the meaning of diversity and what is the diversity on our campuses, right? And diversity also includes that, okay, what kind of experiences and perspective people have or students have about the campus. Okay, so that is why diversity here is broadly interpreted and explored. It doesn't mean that diversity, equity, and inclusion is a perfect instrument. because I have so many of my black friend and other friend actually, they're highly critical about that. I completely agree with that. Because try to understand that we are trying to change. I mean, here people are trying to change the 400 or 500-year old history of the racism and colonialism in just in 20, 30 years. It is not going to happen like that. Okay. For example, sorry, I'm taking too much time. Why Trump is now so popular and coming back again? Only reason is that because when Obama came for the 2 term, it's a backlash of the Obama administration. How dare a black can be a president in the White House, Capitol White House, not the White House building, white people's house, that is White House. Okay. So we need to understand that we are trying to challenge the history of 2000-year-old history. Okay. So certainly we will take another probably 50 or 100 years to change this discourse and the dynamics and culture and politics and so on. I hope it should be less than that, but that's a trajectory. Okay. And what is the last point? Sorry.
Yeah, my last point was that to having this kind of institution from my personal experience in the IIT Hyderabad. So STSCL and the gender equality kind of
Oh, yeah.
institution, don't do things like a spark or something to achieving to the
Honestly,
broader understanding of diversity.
no, I think my understanding, and there is a data, I also quoted the data in my book regarding the SC/ST cell. These cells are good for nothing, honestly. And the problem is that with this cell is that my own experience, I work with IIT Mumbai, regarding the same kind of intervention. And honestly, as an institution, I'm not talking about the cell or the one person in the SC/ST cell. As an institution, they are not inclusive. They are not, interested to resolve this issue or address these issues. So unless and until there is a broader framework and broader intervention at the higher level, I think this kind of SCSTCL, I don't see any kind of significance. Yeah, might be small issue here and there, but it would not address the issue at the systemic level.
Yeah, yeah, I agree somehow. Yeah, even in the IIT Hyderabad, there was a one talk recently by the one professor from the HCU. He came here, and there I am from the liberal arts department, social science in the IIT Hyderabad. So when that talk happened, so I found like very less footfall from the engineering background. So that was also like to understand it, who are like serious for whom this talk has been conducted. So yeah, I feel that thing, this like difference between coming from Delhi University or understanding from JNU to the IIT setting. Yeah.
Yeah. I think also you have talked about Bharat. You have extensively talked about it in your chapter 3 when you talk about the diversity and as a concept, and also when you talk about the campus climate and the institutional support. So the important thing is the institutional support, the imperatives that you actually suggest from the institutional arrangement that we have in the US, and that we are oblivious to it in India. And I have one question, if I can ask, if we have time.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. So I'm very interested to understand about this caste as protected category, and the 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 kind of trajectory that we kind of took upon from that Cisco verdict, and after that, so what are the changes that we are witnessing? I previously asked about whether there is any possible chances of repercussions coming from upper caste Hindus, and who are not just aligned to MAGA but also non-MAGA Hindus and all that. But then I also wanted to know about the positive impact that we have gained from from Cisco, particularly not just with the arrangement, but also with the sense of that by identifying the the subjectiveness of the identity from Dalit Bahujan students, and to also sort of organize themselves to stabilize this arrangement rather than giving it away. So I wanted to understand if there is such kind of development has been sort of going on in the US after this Cisco verdict.
Okay, let me tell you one thing. I said earlier, but again, okay, one thing before I start. Some of the topic for me is very difficult to explain because of lack of the time we have, and the complexity of the topic. So let me start with one thing. So Cisco case is very different. That is more in a larger society and larger legal framework. Okay, and I continuously try to make it distinct. So Cisco case is very different, and whatever happening in U.S. academia, particularly about the caste as a protected category, is very different. Two processes. It's two different worlds. Let me put it in that way. So Cisco case is more political, mainstream issue and legality of the American Constitution and so on. Okay, that is very different. That's a good judgment. That's a good kind of initiative, and also educated the American audience and built some environment and so on. That's great. But the anti-caste campaign on campus is what on different campuses is happening and happened already and still happening. Is a very different process. Is very different and different from the political processes and the Cisco case or the Swaminarayan Temple of New Jersey case and so on. So on US campuses, there are a large number of, you can say that faculty from the privileged background, they are involved in anti-caste campaign. Let me put in that way. By and large, they are the you can say stakeholders who supporting and taking forward this anti-caste campaign. Okay, that is true because our students are hardly in very few number, and whatever started in last 5 years or so. Before 5 years when I started, I didn't know anyone actually. Let me tell you one thing. Okay, so large number of so-called privileged caste faculty and the scholar, they are taking up the anti-caste issue. Our people are also there, but that is very specific to campus because each campus has a different politics, history, demographics, right, and so on. So when any kind of anti-caste campaign they start, okay, they start based on with the faculty like 4, 5, 10 faculty or the student level. They build the campaign, they take it to the university administration, and as I said earlier, that here the awareness and critical consciousness about the social justice aspect is very very high. I'm continuously comparing between Indian higher education and here. Okay, if you bring something like that in India, foreign concept like a caste, take example, talk to about race in India, because we have considerable number of the students from Africa and from the so-called black students. Okay, they experience discrimination. Delhi is the best example, and there are studies also. If you talk about race, someone should do this experiment and go to administration anywhere, JNU or whatever, and see the response. I'm telling you that out of 10, nine or more, they throw away that what the nonsense you are talking about. Right? But here the system is different. Here awareness is different. Critical consciousness is different. They will listen. Okay, they will understand. And if you present your topic and your aspect comprehensively, and persuasively, then certainly they will listen. And our example is the one of the best example, because we have not only achieved the protected category, we also achieve the status in terms of the institutionalizing the caste, in terms of reporting and so on. So now caste is included in the incidence report system. So caste is included in that. And now we got the grant also creating awareness about educating the campus community about the caste.
So I think we have no more questions. So yeah. Thank you, Dr. Bharat Rathod. This is really quite invigorating for us. I mean, it has been, I mean, we still haven't talked about much of the, the contextualization part that you did, that you sort of take upon in your book with the caste, and also the engagement that you have done with the critical race theory, and how much it can be, like helpful to sort of reconstitute, to to reassess our understanding and negotiations with the hierarchical spaces in Indian academic institutions. So I think this is a very quite helpful session for all of us. I hope all the participants benefited from this, and thank you for your engagements with your questions. And please read Dr. Rathod's book, Dalit Academic Journeys. It's very much important, not just for the students, but like people from all, not just from Bahujan students, but people who are interested in the question of inclusion, and people who are interested people who have their stakes in the cause of social justice should actually sort of take up this work. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for your presence, everyone, and thank you, Dr. Rathod.
Thank you so much, Kavilan and Vidya, and speaking from Margin team. And before I leave, I just want to say to all the scholars that please, you can expand your research or academic work more interdisciplinary. In India, we have very narrow kind of a focus, but here I see, because I experience the interdisciplinary work is very extensive, and they promote interdisciplinary work. And you can reach out to various faculty or the students, to try to engage with them, to collaborate with them. And that will not only help you in terms of your research and your academic engagement, but also in terms of your professional development and career prospect. Because honestly, I'm also coming from a very humble background, and some mentor helped me to make that kind of connection. Network is very, very, very important here, right? So best of luck, and hope to connect again in future on some other aspect. And thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you, everyone.
Okay, bye. Yeah,
Bye.
bye.